Hey, good morning, Hope. It's good morning in person. Glad you're here with us. Glad you're here online as well. Man, what a great time of worship. And I'm excited to share with you this new series that we begin today. And it begins with a story that happened back in 2008. Pastor Jeff and I were together in a meeting, and he had said to me, Rick, it's time for Hope to begin serving international missions. And so I took that on as one of those projects, and oh, there's light right there. Should I be standing here? No, it doesn't matter? All right. And I'm off. Now I'm on. So I took that on as a project that I was going to begin moving Hope towards international mission trips. And so in 2008, 2009, there was lots of meetings, lots of prayer, lots of conversations about where we should go, what should we do, where is God moving, where is God calling us. And we looked at, we had conversations and meetings about going to Africa. We had conversations and meetings about going to South America. And we even took one trip to South America, to Brazil, and came back. And we're like, no, we're not sure if that's where our partnership lies, but we don't know where. But we know there's a place that God is calling us as a church. And then in 2007, Haiti had a devastating earthquake. And you all probably remember that. 316,000 people were killed because of the earthquake and its after effects. $7 billion in damages were done. The earthquake and its aftermath and the subsequent cholera outbreak that came immediately after that as well. Long-term consequences that have continued to plague that country. Haiti's economy and its society and its infrastructure were devastated. And so 1 year later, Hope sent 17 people to Haiti. And there were people who were asking questions, and I was leading that team, and I was asking that question too, just not out loud, is what can 17 people do? There were some who said, hey, you're raising a lot of money, why don't you just send the cash? And I was giving the correct answer is no, we didn't send the people. But I also was wondering, what can 17 people do when there are billions of dollars of aid needed and 300,000 people have lost their lives and everyone there, millions, had lost everything? We didn't know what we could do, but Hope chose to move closer. Hope chose to move closer. And so Hope helped build the House of Abraham in Jacmel, which was a town a little south of Port-au-Prince along the coast. And Haiti, which had once been a distant place, began to be Fennell and Mimi. They were the directors of this new orphanage that they were building in Jacmel, Haiti. And 16 orphans were there in this House of Abraham, and those 16 children had names like Richardson and Tchaikovsky. And they became names and faces. And 10 years later, after 10 trips, and along with other churches partnering as well, and along with other workers from local workers who were there doing the majority of the construction, the House of Abraham was established as this new home on the mountainside looking over the city of Jacmel. Now, that was 8 years ago, the picture that you just saw of the House of Abraham. And I'll tell you, we did not solve the problem. We didn't. Haiti is still the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. It currently does not have a functioning government, and people continue to struggle. But in Jacmel, there's an orphanage called the House of Abraham. And Hope moved closer. And we got to know names and faces and stories and people. And we were close enough to change everything. So I'll tell you, this is a personal series for me because during that time and during the time since, I've been thinking about and writing about this phrase. Proximity to pain makes it personal. Proximity to pain makes it personal. I found this during the same time as actually on our third mission trip when we were going to the house of Abraham, and it was a Twitter feed. Someone had wrote, I think it's going to be up on the screen, it's Rich Viotis. He wrote, "It's amazing how proximity to pain either produces deep empathy or cold indifference." Proximity to pain either produces deep empathy or cold indifference. And so I wrote on this Post-it note in my office, proximity to pain makes it personal. I stuck it on my wall, and it's been there since 2012. I began writing and thinking about what does that mean? What does it mean when we move closer to something or to someone? And I've decided that something happens. See, closeness can make a thing or make an issue or a circumstance or even a person personal. Or, if we choose to not be intentional about proximity, then we can become blind or numb to this same thing. So proximity to pain makes it personal. And I have a second Post-it note that says proximity is an opportunity. That proximity is an opportunity. I began to find myself writing and asking these questions. What does it mean to move closer to pain? What does it mean to move closer to pain? Also asking, is moving closer only about physical proximity? I think that certainly is part of it. You have to move closer to someone. You have to move closer to things to know more about them. But is it also about moving closer? Is it also about my posture? Is it about my attitude? I began asking, how often do I move away from pain? How often do I choose to move away from conflict? How often do I choose to move away from something that I perceive as a disruption? See, I think proximity and practicing proximity makes the world more personal. That being close or proximate is to be more like Jesus. That when we choose to move close, we are reflecting the heart of God in the people around us. That we're bringing connection, which is part of God's heart. That we're bringing healing or we're bringing restoration. See, I know that the things that we have in our pockets, those little technological devices that we have, all of the cool people have iPhones. The rest of you have something else, I know. Some Samsung nonsense or something like that. I don't even know what they are. I don't even know what they're called. But you know, we have these devices in our pockets, this technology, and it's moved us further away from community in so many different ways. I know there's also ways that it's made us better and made us closer. I know there are ways it's made us closer. I know that right now my watch, which is connected to my phone, which is in my office, my watch vibrates since I got up here, which means my mom has said, hey, really good message, and it hasn't even started yet, but she tells me that anyway, because she's my mom, right? So it's made us closer to our families. It's made us closer. We have this instant connection to people, right? We see something, we take a picture, we send it to our spouse. Hey, look what I just saw. Look what I just found. So it's made us closer to those who are closest to us. It's also made us closer to people who we don't even know, right? We can follow celebrities. You know, Rich Viotis, who's the pastor of the church in New York City, who I just put up on Twitter. I've never met him. He's the pastor of a large church in New York City, but you know what? We're both pastors. I follow him. I would like to dream that someday he'll follow me. But you see, it's made us closer to our friends and our family, closer to people who we may not ever meet, but it's also pushed us further away in so many other ways. It's pushed us towards echo chambers of social media, where we only have to listen to and read about the things that we agree about. It's moved us away from conversation. It's moved us away from community. And what I've discovered about proximity, and as I've been writing and thinking about this idea that proximity to pain makes it personal, is that you can't know someone's story from a distance. That it requires movement. And that being closer to the world moves us closer to Jesus. And so as we begin this series, I want you to know that here's my prayer. My prayer for this series is that you and I will begin to see things that we call issues, not only as something we see on our news feeds, but as people with names and faces and stories. That we not see race or gender identity or politics or homelessness or food insecurity or loneliness, that we only see those things from a distance when we read an article or watch something on TV or listen to a podcast, or maybe even when it's on the other side of the street or another neighborhood or another town or even another country. But that we would choose to move closer, even closer to the people who may think differently than us. I was listening to a podcast interview the other day with someone, and they were saying you're fascinating because when you go onto these news channels, you don't discern. You go on both sides of the aisle. And I thought, he could preach this message. Because he said, you know what? He said, if I don't talk to the people over there, how am I ever going to hear their point of view, and how are they ever going to hear my point of view? He said, so I talk to them. See, as we move closer, the things that are issues become personal. Proximity to pain is personal, and proximity is an opportunity. So what I've discovered since writing that Post-it note is that poverty and homelessness will only be an issue for me because I live in a middle-class suburb until it becomes a person. And I've told you about my friend at Wawa who I met since I wrote that Post-it note. That sexual orientation and gender identity will only be an issue for someone like me until I know a person with a name and a face and a story. That racism for a white person like me, it'll only be an issue until it becomes a person with a name and a face and a story. Because when we move closer, there is potential. Because proximity is an opportunity. So in less than a month, we're going to Malawi, and this is not a mission trip sermon, but I am going to tell you another story. So in a month, we go to Malawi. Malawi is a long ways away. And we made a decision as a church that Hope is going to move closer. So right now, it's only Malawi. I don't have a lot of information to give you. I'm not the detail guy on this trip. If you want the details, you talk to Pastor Dave. I'm just going to Malawi. It's a country 8,000 miles from here. And we're going to move closer. 15 people from Hope will get closer. I do know this part of the trip. It's a 14-hour flight. The first flight. And then it's 2 hours after that. And then we're going to arrive in Lilongwe. I've never been to Lilongwe. But Hope's going to move closer. I'm going to move closer. And we're going to get to know names and faces and stories. And a month from now, it will no longer be just a country on the other side of the world. It will be people. Because proximity is an opportunity. And proximity to pain makes it personal. The reason we're going to Malawi is part of this is this whole Hope in Motion campaign that we've been talking about. And as we're moving, and Hope in Motion really is about moving closer as well. And I know you're going to say, how is an LED wall and kid-appropriate spaces and a university in Malawi, how is that moving closer? But just hear this is kind of a little commercial break, but just hear this part. So Pastor Jeff's not here, so I can say these things. You know that we're doing this to help honor Pastor Jeff, right? This is about Pastor Jeff's retirement, and we asked him about what we do for a gift and those kinds of things, and he said, you know what, I'd love for you to do these things. How is that moving Hope closer, and how is that connected to his retirement? But yet, if you think you've heard him tell this story, that there was a time more than 35 years ago when he was driving through Voorhees. He lived in Haddonfield and was a pastor in Haddonfield. And when he was driving through Voorhees, he was inspired to stop at what was being built as Main Street. And he was spurred on by the Holy Spirit that, you know what this Main Street doesn't have? It doesn't have a church. And so how can the church move closer? And you know what? Back then, those many years ago, when he was standing there on Main Street and was inspired by that, he didn't know your faces. He didn't know your names. He didn't know your stories. But yet, because of that movement of God, you're all here right now. You're all watching online right now. It was about moving closer. How's an LED wall about moving closer? Is that investment and that space behind me that will be filled with that wall will create a worship environment that fits in the 21st century. And the people who aren't here yet, the names and the faces and the stories that we don't know yet will be here, and they'll be inspired by that environment and be engaged in that environment and be drawn into a relationship with God. There are going to be kids' spaces because there are kids who experience the world differently than we do. And we're going to move closer by creating environments that fit their needs. There are students living in Malawi who aren't able to go to college. Literally around the world, we will move closer. All right, now, back to the message, but I gotta give you a little disclaimer. I am an off-the-charts extrovert. If you didn't know that about me, I am an off-the-charts extrovert. My favorite thing to do is stand up like this and talk to crowds of people. I get jacked up by it, all right? I go home, when I have my small group on Wednesday nights, our small group goes from 7:30 to 9, and then I go home and I stay up till like midnight because I have so much energy stuck in and I go to bed at 9 o'clock every other day. Wednesday night, I'm up till midnight because I am so jacked because I've been around as 6 or 7 other guys and we've been chatting and talking about things and I'm like energized by the conversation and I just love being an extrovert. I love Sunday mornings. I love all the new people I get to meet. I love the old people I haven't seen in a while. Not that you're old, but I mean old that I've known you for a long time. And I love it. And I also know that not everyone is like me. I know that there are introverts, and I had to look this up to see what you do. Introverts, you turn inward. And you get your energy through quiet reflection and one-on-one conversations and time alone. And it's not about shyness, it's about drawing energy from solitude and depth rather than from noise and stimulation. I come alive in community and I gain energy from interaction and conversation and all those things. And so I know that the things I'm going to talk about in the next few minutes, you're going to think, that works for you, Rick, you're an extrovert. But I want you to hear this. This is so important. Jesus modeled both. I'm learning that Jesus would withdraw to quiet places and he would energize. Jesus also engaged fully with crowds and disciples, and by the writings we can tell that he was energized. I'm learning to be an introvert, and man, it's really hard. It takes work. I'm learning to embrace quiet and learning to be alone. I don't always like it, but I know that I need this as well, because the goal isn't to become someone you're not, but it is to stretch just a little bit. Becoming like Jesus, while also honoring our natural wiring and growing in emotional and relational maturity. All right, so that's all the intro to the series. Let's jump in. In Luke chapter 5, it says this. It's up on the screen. In one of the villages, Jesus met a man with an advanced case of leprosy. Luke was a doctor, so he lets us know this is an advanced case. This isn't brand new. This guy's had this disease for a season at least. When the man saw Jesus, he bowed with his face to the ground, begging to be healed. Lord, he said, if you are willing, you can heal me and make me clean. Jesus reached out and touched him. I am willing, he said, be healed. And instantly the leprosy disappeared. So this man has leprosy. He approaches Jesus and he begs to be healed. Leprosy was not only a physical suffering, but it was also a social, emotional, and even a spiritual alienation. This man would not be allowed in his home. He would not be allowed in town. He would not even be allowed into the synagogue or the temple because he was unclean. Lepers were forced to live outside communities. They were cut off from their family and cut off from worship. Do you see the movement? It's not about moving closer with leprosy. It's about moving away. Lepers were moved away. They were pushed out. They were out of sight. They were out of mind. They were not close. Leprosy was an issue of the first century. Not proximate, but away, out, removed. And Jesus does the unthinkable. Not healing. The unthinkable was he reached out and he touched the man. He touched him. This is a radical act. Given all the societal pressures and the isolation that is connected to leprosy, Jesus did this radical act. He touched the man. He didn't have to do that. You know, there's another story where a man comes to Jesus and he says, hey, my servant is sick. Could you heal him? I know you don't have to come to my town to do it. All you have to do is say the word. And Jesus says the word, and from a town away, the man is healed. That's pretty significant power, right? George, isn't that significant? Amen. Right, there we go. All right. That's significant, right? Yeah. And so, but yet, in this situation, this advanced stage of leprosy, Jesus touches him. He didn't have to touch him. Jesus, though, made a decision to move closer. This man had an advanced case. Luke is letting us know that he has open sores. He has decaying skin, rotting flesh. His touch is contagious. Yet Jesus touches him, communicating closeness and compassion and solidarity. This man probably has not felt human contact since the disease. Jesus touched him. And being close to someone is more than just about being physically close to them, but a willingness to experience someone's pain and isolation. See, Jesus does more than offer healing. He doesn't just say, you are healed. He touches him. He comes close to him. By coming close, Jesus was having this shared experience of his pain, acknowledging his pain, and in a way, joining in his pain. And it's this intentional connection that he makes, restoring not only his physical health, but also the man's dignity and humanity and belonging. And I'm discovering, as I'm thinking and praying more about this idea of proximity and what it means to be close enough to change everything, that proximity takes courage. That moving close is a courageous act in our spiritual journey. You see, to be close to Jesus, to follow Jesus, requires us moving through life with intention. That means that as we're surrounded by crowds, while we're moving through our jobs, while we're surrounded by our agendas, we also need to be aware of what's happening around us. Because if we're going to be like Jesus, we need to be aware of what's going on around us. And that takes courage. Because it's easier to just see the things around us as issues or problems in our world, when it may be that you are in proximate location to that person for a reason. I also think it took courage for that man with leprosy. I mean, maybe it's desperate courage, but it still was courage. He approached Jesus, risking rejection, although I'm sure he's experienced rejection over and over again since he's been sick. But he still was also expressing this deep faith. He says, if you're willing, you can do it. If you're willing, you can heal me, he says. It takes courage to trust Jesus in that way. To say, hey, I know you can do it. I just need you to do it, Jesus. I know you can. And Jesus wasn't afraid to be with this man. He wasn't afraid to share in his pain and isolation. Jesus was okay to spend time with him. He was okay to spend time in the margins with those who are marginalized. He spent time with sinners and women and children and sick and poor. All would have been seen as marginalized in the first century. That Jesus was moving through his agenda of his day and his week and his month and his years, and he had a mission, but yet he didn't miss what was happening around him. So I'm going to wrap up right here. I'm over time, and Jeff's not here, so. I want to wrap up with this. I want to shift our biblical focus in this story, okay? I've heard this story a lot preached, and I've preached this story as well. And I know that whenever we preach it, we always preach it as the leper, that we are the lepers in this story, and we need Jesus to touch us, and we need Jesus to heal us. And that's a good way to view this story, and it works, all right? And yes, we're all sick, we're all in pain, we're all broken, we all have this disease of sin in our lives. And we need Jesus to touch us. Man, that works, that plays, all right? But there's another way to look at this too. He said, if you are willing, and Jesus said, I am willing. What if as disciples, what if as students of Jesus, what if as those who are following our rabbi, were to literally do what the rabbi does? What if when Luke was hearing that story, Luke wasn't there. What if Peter or James or John, when they were there for that story, and as they watched this happen, what if they thought, hey, you know what? We're supposed to be just like Jesus. What if being like Jesus means we're the ones who say, I am willing? I think that is a simple yet difficult challenge for us today. Amen. Am I willing to say, I am willing? Are you willing to be challenged to say, I am willing? Are you willing to reach out to someone who feels isolated or marginalized, a neighbor, a coworker, someone in your community, someone in your, someone who may be overlooked? Are you willing to reach out to someone who's maybe in an isolated or marginalized population? A nursing home resident, a homeless individual, or a person with disabilities? Are you willing to spend time with someone, invite them to coffee and ask them, hey, how's it going right now? It might even be someone sitting in the row with you. Are you willing to consider how intentional or unintentional you are about the people around you? Now get this. I am not challenging you to do it. I'm not challenging you to go fabricate a way to connect with somebody. I'm not asking you to go out and find a scenario where that fits. I'm asking you, and I believe this story is asking you, are you willing? Are you willing? That if the opportunity arises, are you willing? That proximity is an opportunity, and proximity to pain is personal, and that the closer we move towards others, it changes everything. See, what I've discovered is there is no bottom to God's distribution of grace. I've been following Jesus for a long time, and I've discovered that it's still higher than I can imagine, and it is still further than I can reach, and it is inexhaustible. That the grace of God is inexhaustible. That God's grace continues to confound me. Because just when I think I have it figured out, God moves and makes you grander. That it's confused me, and it surely envelops me. That moving closer to Jesus is what happens when I move closer to others. When I move closer to the world, I find myself being closer to Jesus. Close enough to change everything. Not in the world, but everything in me. So are you willing? The band's going to come up. That's the only way to get me off. The band's going to come up. Are you willing for the issues that you may see this week? Because you'll see them. You'll see them. You'll be driving, walking, talking, and you'll see the issues that you'll face. Will you see them as people? Are you willing to ask, what could I do? Or what should I believe? Or what could I think? Are you willing to be close enough for it to change everything in you? Not the business as usual, just go through your week. Not church as usual, just show up and get it done with. But what if you were to allow it to change everything? Moving closer. So here's the challenge. The band's going to sing, and I don't want you to stand. I'm going to tell you not to stand. Don't stand. There, I said it. But if you would say, hey, this week, God, I am willing. 1 week, God, I'll give you 1 week, I'll be willing. If you point something out to me, there's an opportunity, I'll take it. Just put your hand out while the band's singing. As submission, God, I am willing. All right, I'm done.